Welcome to the Turning Point Podcast, where business growth meets personal development. We know as leaders and business owners, you're juggling a lot, and we've spent decades creating the best systems, tools, and shifts that bring you unimaginable success in your business and tremendous satisfaction in your personal life. That's just how we thrive around here. And now, here's your host, John Goldman, here to guide you to your own turning point. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Turning Point Podcast. My name is John Goldman. I'm together with Michael Lamm.
Good morning or good afternoon, John. It's great to see you. And it's always fun to talk to you.
Thank you, Michael. It's really great to be together with you. Today, what we're talking about is the wonderful episode called The Surprise Ending. And at Turning Point, our goal and our mission is to empower leaders to actualize their greatest potential through simplify, codify, and multiply. So our purpose is to simplify complex things and codify it into systems and help you multiply by getting multiples on your sale, by growing and improving your life and your business. So today we're talking about transition. And Michael is an expert in mergers and acquisitions and helping companies buy and sell. So Michael and I have worked together on multiple deals working through this transition process. And what we're going to just say is peel back the layers and peel back the curtain and let you see what's really going on, because it sounds really great to sell your business, but we're going to talk about what's called the surprise ending today. And that means that you're going to learn what to look for, what not to look for. One of the most important things to know when you're going on a journey is what direction not to go in. And we've been down a lot of the wrong areas. We've made lots of mistakes. And so fortunately, you'll be able to learn from some of our mistakes, some of the mistakes of our clients. And you'll also learn best practices of what's working, what's not. And we'll talk about both the inner game and the outer game. When you sell your business, when you go through a transition, it has both components, both an inner game and outer game. So Michael, if you could share with everybody a little bit about what you do and the value that you bring through based on the experience that you have.
Happy to, John. So our business, Corporate Advisory Solutions, is a boutique investment bank, and we do mergers and acquisitions, valuation, exit prep, and other boardroom level consulting work, really in three areas of tech-enabled business services. We do a lot of work in the credit and collections ecosystem, the healthcare revenue cycle management area, as well as the call center and BPO area. All of the areas that we cover are transforming very, very quickly with technology, which is creating even more M&A activity and more interest in doing exit planning, exit prep initiatives currently with many business owners that are in these areas.
Fantastic. So Michael and I have found that we work really nicely together, both the inner game and the outer game, both the strategic and the tactical and inner workings of our thinking and our psychology together with our emotions. That's what creates a proper transition. So we're always looking at three phases: the before, the during, and the after the event. So right now, what we're talking about is the before and after. And so the name of this episode is called The Surprise Ending. You want to talk a little bit about why we call it the surprise ending, Michael?
Well, because I think from my end, John, like I always wished I would have gotten a psychology degree in college because there's so much evaluation work involved in just figuring out what to do. It doesn't necessarily mean the sale of the business today. It may be the sale of the business 5 years from now, but figuring out in your own mind what you want to do with your business and your life going forward. And I spend a lot of time trying to figure that out. And that ending at the end of all of the stuff is not always one path, it may be multiple paths.
Michael, what we're going to do is deal with one of the questions. We'll deal with as many questions as we can get to today from our audience. So people ask us these questions, and I want to share the first one is that we received is, I can't decide whether to sell or keep. How do I determine what do I do? So let's take the angle of the assumption for this person. What is it that drives the decision? We have different components. We have the financial, we have your team and your company, and then you have your own personal approach. So when we say the surprise ending, what I believe that most people don't know is that the grass is always greener on the other side. until you get there. And you get over there, you see, whoa, all these brown spots. It looks so great from the other side. And what we're going to share today is that so many times you get to the other side and it's absolutely not what you expect it to be. It sounds really great. The American dream sounds great. The American dream is you go to school, you get a degree, you get a job, you get married, you get a car, you get a house, then you make some more money, you save up, and then maybe if you get a chance to build your own business, and then you sell your business, and then you are happy forever. What's the problem with the American dream, Mike?
It's not always what you think it is, John. It just that's always what I feel like people you can plan for events, you can plan for life, but it's not always what you think it's going to be. And you've got to do really thoughtful a process internally inside yourself to figure out what you want to do and what you want to be at the end of it. And if you don't, you may end up in a place that you don't like at the end of that rainbow with all the money in your pocket.
Most people think are like, you know what, give me the money and it'll be fine.
It doesn't happen, John.
It's not true. You and I have both worked with hundreds of people who have bought and sold businesses, people who have more money than they'll ever need, and they're absolutely not happy. So the question is why? What happened? How do you end up in this? So the question that we received from the audience is, I can't decide whether I should sell or keep. And so let's talk a little bit about some of the strategies and insights that you can use that will help you determine whether you should sell or keep. I'll let you start, Mike.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of times the first question that we get from a business owner is how much is the business worth? Is it even worth selling the company today? Putting aside all the psychological, we want to know how much is it worth and is it going to give me what I need financially? And what that starts, John, is a bigger conversation because then we start to unpack what really is going on inside their head and inside the company that's driving them to think about whether they want to keep or sell at this point in their life.
Right. So the first thing is what we'll call the big number. What's that number that I need? Now, once you can get a handle on that number, the next question is, where am I going? What am I doing? If you really want to get married and you finally get married, how happy are you going to be? Well, one of the predictors is how happy were you before you got married? And if you were a grumpy dude and not very happy before you got married, guess what you're going to be after you get married? Grumpy and unhappy also. Or people say, oh, you know what? I really want freedom. I'm going to start my own business. It's like saying, I want a freedom. I want to have a baby. It's crazy. And so we spoke about having a baby. When you own a business, it's like having a baby. It's a beautiful baby. You love it. But what happens many times is you have an ugly baby. An ugly baby means that it's not worth the value to you or to someone else. So I think the first thing to decide and to look at is, do I have an asset? And an asset is something you can buy, sell, or keep, but an asset you shall reap. And it's always the right idea to start making sure, is this something that's worth buying? And even if I'm not going to sell it, to have an asset that pays me residual passive revenue streams and that's not overly dependent on me. That's part of the ugly baby. And the other question is, what are you going to do when this is done? So talk to me about some of the experiences that you had with people that have been disillusioned.
I've sat with so many business owners, even before we deliver the news on how beautiful or ugly their baby may be in terms of a number. It is really thought provoking. Some people say after they get a handle on what it's worth, John, they say, well, what do I do now? What do I do if after I sell the business? Do I even have a plan? And
Who cares? And all the money I need, I won't have any more pressure. It'll be great. I'll figure out what I'll do. That's the least of my problems.
I hear you, but sometimes if they're really introspective and depending on where they're sitting in life, divorced, married, kids, whatever they've got going on, they start thinking about, at least they should, and we try to urge them to do it too, is to really think about what happens after. And are they going to, what are they going to do after? Because I've talked to so many people that have said, Michael, don't bother me about what I do after. I'm going to play golf all day long. Okay. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be the happiest person you've ever seen, driving around and playing golf every day. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to after the transaction that thought that they were going to play golf 5 days a week that said, man, this is lonely. It's empty. Is there more to this?
I want you to underline that because most people really don't believe that. They think that the end of the dream is I've got enough money, I can finally retire with peace. I don't have pressure anymore. I don't have to worry anymore.
But John, I'll tell you, this is after, right? They don't know this in the beginning and in the process. It's after they realize, they say, is this really the end game? But now they've done it. They've done a lot of stuff to get there, right? They
Okay.
sold their business, planned, retired, but then they're even more challenged after the fact.
So let's give some tools and strategies that someone can use. The first thing we want to look at is dig your well before you're thirsty. In other words, you look at where you are now, where am I and where am I going? And so there's a couple of really important strategies that we want to look at. Number one is, do you have a life plan? What is a life plan? To me, this is I'll show you my entire one-page life plan. I have AI and all that kind of stuff, but I work out of paper. This little piece of paper is my entire one-page life plan. And I do it every year. It takes me about a month or so to do. And then I create a 90-day sprint. I create three 90-day sprints. And then see my two little tabs here. One is for my 5 wins a week and one is for my 5 wins a day. And so when you create a life plan, what's involved is you look at what matters most. As you know, I traveled around the world for a long time. After I graduated college, I had one of the world's largest student-owned advertising and PR agencies. And after that, I took off with a backpack and a Frisbee, and I played competitive ultimate Frisbee. And I had a rule that unless I got invited in somewhere, I would sleep outside in a tent. So since that time, and I'm now in my 60s, so since my 20s, almost every day or every week, I ask the question, what matters most? And if you're taking notes right now, that's the first question to ask is, what matters most? And most people, what most people say? Taking
Well,
care of my family. You know what? You don't need that much to take care of your family. And most people that are listening to this recording, they're not worried about having enough meals. They're worried about how much I'm going to leave, succession planning. They're worried about they've got enough money in the bank to live. So therefore, the question becomes, what matters most? And there's a structure, a way to go about doing this. When you create a one-page life plan, you look at what is my purpose on this planet as an individual, if I'm married, as a husband, if I've got children, as a parent. And then in this spacesuit called Michael Lamm, what is my goal? What is my purpose? Why am I here on this planet? And most people can't answer the question.
it's a hard question to answer without real thought and time to give it all the energy it needs, John. I find that it's one thing to give it lip service and say, yeah, yeah. It's another thing to really dial into it and figure it out, in my mind.
Right. So typically, we can't free ourselves from jail. Meaning that if you're in jail, like sometimes you need someone to come up with their horse and rope and pull the wall down. And so most of us are like that. We're interdependent. We're not independent. And so when we have someone else that helps facilitate that conversation, what we call a VIP, a verbal introspection partner, meaning I'm speaking and I'm introspecting verbally. So the other person is like they have ears that are pulling out of you. And when you go through that process of the creating one-page life plan, you're able to get clear on it. So let me give you a couple examples of guys that have gone through transition. One, we'll call him Steve. Well, that's actually his name. So Steve, he had a steel company and good-looking guy, doing really well. But Steve had a gimp leg. Polo shirt looks great, but he's limping around on the golf course because he has a disease called CMT. And this disease, it hits your extremities. So Steve is really passionate about trying to bring healing to the world for this. And he's made all the money that he needs. He's a serial entrepreneur. And so we started discussing what matters most. Like if you didn't do business and you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off, So what would you do? Like, I don't know. Like that's what I knew. That's what I know how to do. And he's got multiple businesses. So I took him to Sedona, Arizona. Sedona is where there's vortexes, and it's healing vortexes. And there's two types of time, Mike. There's Kairos and Chronos. Chronos is like chronology, you're an hour here, hour there. Kairos, it's a Greek word, and it means a different type of time where you have time to breathe and think. And so when we do turning point retreats, there's something magical happens out there. So we go to Sedona, and I knew that Steve had some wisdom inside himself, but it was getting covered up. So we took him out to this rocky area where the vortex were, blindfolded him, and he's got his walking stick, and he was so angry at me. Like, what the heck are you doing? And it's only when you can learn to start to trust yourself. I do rock climbing and whatnot, and I've learned how to actually climb with my eyes closed. At first, like, what am I? But we actually have innate wisdom. And most of the people that are going through selling their business have innate wisdom. But it's like Michelangelo said, that if you're sculpting a horse and it's so beautiful, everyone asks him, like, how did you sculpt that horse? I took away everything that wasn't a horse. So too, we have this innate wisdom. And it's only when we get to a place where we can start to trust that wisdom and settle down our thinking that we start to figure out what matters most. So he's walking and he's like, oh, I agitated. And then he starts getting into a flow and he realizes that I'm not living life the way I want to live life. And so at that moment, he makes the decision that he's going to sell. And so we made this cool image called Man of Steel, Legs of Kryptonite. And because he's a man of steel industry, really strong, but he's got these legs of kryptonite. And so many times the weakness is where the opportunity is. And so he said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to sell the business and then I'm going to raise money for CMT. And I'm happy to tell you that he sold the business for a fair amount. He's doing great, and he's raised millions and millions of dollars by being the man of steel, legs of kryptonite, and teaching people how to play hurt. And so this is a transition that came from identifying looking at his one-page life plan. What am I meant to do on this planet? And there's a certain point in time where you make a shift where you go from making a living to making a life, and living life in crescendo as opposed to diminuendo.
It's a heck of a story, John. I mean, it speaks to why people need to really take the energy and the time to really get them out of their comfort zone into their head with somebody like you that could help just get them to get a handle on what they want the rest of their life to look like. Because I'm telling you from what I see when I deal with business owners that don't go deeper, other than what they know is they want to play golf. There's got to be more to it than that, right? In my mind, after everything that someone's built, created, family, friends, all the stuff that goes into it, what's the next part of it in my mind?
Right. So there's two types of music, Michael. There's diminuendo and crescendo. Diminuendo is da 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 da.
Sure.
That's diminuendo. Crescendo is da 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 da. So the idea is living life in crescendo as opposed to diminuendo. And when you could take in the idea that your greatest contribution is always ahead of you, that's a totally different way. Based on the way that I've learned to work with other people, it's not about retirement. I think retirement is a dirty word because there's some goal that, like, I'm going to cross a finish line where I've got enough money and then I don't do anything. That is when you start getting sick. That's when you start fighting with your wife. That's when you lose purpose. That's when all the things that gave you value, gave you meaning. Most people don't know that when you're running a business, you've got a purpose in life. You have a position in life. You have authority. You have power. You have creativity. You have freedom. You have influence. You have impact. Suddenly you take all that away. Like you're walking around the house, like, take out the trash, honey. Like, oh, okay. And I've seen it so many times. So the surprise ending is it doesn't end that way. We talked about a couple other guys. Dan, you and I both worked with someone by the name of Dan. And how does he live life in crescendo? So it is fun to sell your business. And there's a couple phases. The first phase is the honeymoon phase. You sell out, it's like, woohoo, let's have a drink. And like, I'm sleeping as late as I want tomorrow morning. I don't have to answer to anybody for anything. And then after a while, man was not made to sit around. And so you start asking yourselves, what assets do I have? And where can I make my greatest contribution? So Dan, who you and I both worked with, I spoke to him just a couple of weeks ago, and we helped him with that before stage, the internal stage, and then building the business so that it's less dependent on him, building the team, building up the assets so that it's sellable. What we call an asset ability. Whether you want to sell it, whether you want to keep it, whether you want to sell or keep an asset, you should reap. And so then he comes to you and find a buyer, and now the buyer takes over the company, and it's like, okay, what do I do now? And where his greatest contribution is with his family. Being able to take care of your kids and your grandkids and give your kids a break financially or with time-wise, tremendous contribution. Some people, another person that you and I both know, Jim. So Jim went through this really difficult stage, and Jim went through a stage where he had to make a shift in his life. And now they've ended up buying and selling other business. He wasn't ready to just retire, but he could take those assets, but through their connections, they can make all sorts of amazing things happen. And through their contributions, one time he said to me, I'm sitting on this board, John, and we're having this big debate. And I said, how much are we talking about? We're talking about $8,500. It's like, can I just write you a check and be done with this? Let's get on to something more important. So the assets that people have, maybe you could talk a little about the living with asset mindset as opposed to deficit mindset. Deficits are like all the problems. The assets are internal, external, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, but the way of thinking with a business owner, right? If they own multiple entities and they have cash flow and they have other things, assuming things are going well for them, right? Financially, their mindset is to keep going, right? To keep building and building. I always question, well, that's great, but where do you want to be? Right? Where do you want to be at the end of this? Do you want to give it all away to charity? Do you want your son that's got issues with whatever he has? Do you want him to be helped? Like, where does it begin and end? And a lot of people need to be prompted, John. They need to be asked these types of questions to get their brain thinking about other ways of handling their wealth. There's no one answer for everybody. It's every time it's different in some capacity. And I try to unpack that. And the biggest question I try to ask all the time, probably the same that you do, is what impact do you want to have? Professionally, personally, your kids, your wife, what do you want? Like, where do you want to have the biggest impact and how do you want to get there?
I don't know. I don't know. That's what we hear all the time. I don't know. So I don't know does not really work. And that's what keeps people stuck. There's no joy like getting out of doubt. 100%.
Correct. That's where I love your Sedona concept, right? You got to get out of your day to really unpack it. Because if you're just living day to day and every day you're driving your kids to school, coming home, doing dinner, not changing your routine, I think getting out of the routine to figure out what happens post transaction is something that becomes very important for people to be able to make that decision to
So,
sell or not to sell.
right. So let's talk about a few of the considerations. Consideration number one is finance. That's what most people think about. Consideration number two is your relationships. You have relationships that have an opportunity to be nurtured and to be invested in and to benefit from them. And so many people, they've sacrificed their families and their children on the altar of productivity and success. And then it's like, my kids are grown, like they even want to see me. Yeah, they do. And their relationships. And now you can actually take some time to learn and some time to grow and some time to give and some time to receive and to nurture those relationships. So you want to look at your spouse or your significant other or time to actually do that. Because when you're running on a regular basis, you don't have time for it. Here's an opportunity to do it in a little bit different pace, but still look towards contribution. And not just, if you look at the world of like, what's here to satisfy me or give to me, then you're going to have a very empty life. And the secret of life is that life is inside out. It's not outside in. So as long as I make my happiness dependent on something external, on the money that I make or the business I have or the reputation I have, so that's outside in. inside out means it's how I'm experiencing, how I'm thinking, and what my experience is in the world. And that, for the first time, is a chance to start to reflect and say, I'm not just a human doing, I'm a human being. And now I can choose, how do I want to be in the world? And so I look at these different assets. I have relationship assets. Wow, I can make connections. There's someone that we worked with, very, very, very wealthy guy, more money than he ever spend. And there's certain things that happen when you have a lot of money. First of all, you start wondering who's a friend, who's not a friend. And charity finds out, and everyone is asking you for this and asking you for that. And it's a little bit difficult. That's one thing. But then you have an opportunity to give. And it starts really asking the question, like, what matters most? Do I want to do medical research? Do I want to help the poor? Do I want to help the local people in my neighborhood? There's certain rules that you start with your family first. Where do we invest the money? First with my family, and then with my local community, and then with the broader community. And what assets do I have? Do I have equipment? Do I have properties? Do I have relationships? Do I have staff? Do I have money? Do I have connections? Those assets you can start to put to use to make your greatest contribution.
No doubt about it, John. I mean, I find though that without the introspection or just the overall just dialogue internally inside your head and externally, it's so difficult for a business owner to get to those answers. And it requires time and effort for them to actually care and want to put it, because life is so easy to get wrapped up in the mechanical wheel and the rat race we live in every single day, to break off of it and step off the wheel and say, what do I want to do now? And I will tell you, the people that I see successful post transaction have really spent that time to do that.
Yeah. What I found also in the transition zones, sometimes people are not ready to sell. And one client, David, the largest cigar retailer in the world, so had an offer to sell, biggest company in the world, wanted to buy him. And he decided, you know what? I like doing this. And David, he also had a little bit of a weight issue. And I said, you want to work on that? No, I don't want to work on that. Okay, that's off the table. But I love podcasting. So he developed this whole retail theory of podcasting that he loves what he's doing. And if you love what you're doing, you don't have to sell. All you want to do is reduce the dependency on you, reduce dependency on others. How do we create what we call a freedom team and a freedom system, and then have residual passive revenue streams? You build those things, and maybe it's not the time to sell. And now he's having the best time. He buys other companies and he advises. And sometimes one of the great assets that you have is your own experience and wisdom. And you have a lot to share. And there's a lot of people that would love for you to just give them an ear, give them some advice, sit on a board. There's so many ways in which you can provide contribution.
No doubt about it. I see a lot of people that we go the other way with, John, and say, don't sell, just keep it. And it's not just because their valuation expectations are too high. It's just they may not be ready for it, and they don't even see it, but we do. And we know that it's going to be really difficult for them to let go of their bloodline. And sometimes you have to be frank and candid with people about that. And maybe the best option is they do keep it, and they do keep it till the end, meaning when they pass away, because that's really what they ultimately want. And that's where their connection is. And that's okay. But they've got to start to know that. They can't be in limbo trying to figure out what direction to go, because they could be in limbo forever.
Right, Michael, what I've seen on multiple occasions is people have sold the company and then actually end up buying it back because they're connected to it. It's a reflection of who I am as a person, and I could do so much more with it. It drives me crazy what you guys are doing to it, and you're running it to the ground. And I care about the people in there. They're like my family. And so I've actually seen people do two things: either they buy it back. It's like, you know what, you're gonna get what you hope for, which is freedom, and then they got the freedom, and it's like, this is not that fun. This is not that engaging. When you are a business leader, you have power in the world. And money is a catalyst to make things happen. So it's something that creates germination, it creates power, flow, and energy. And so when you have money and you have a team and you have a process, you have a system, and you have got a company that can make things happen, that produces life in the world. When you stop having that, the question is, oh, it's just me. What do I do now? And so I've seen people trying to figure out what should I be doing. I'll volunteer in the hospital a little bit. I'll volunteer a little bit over there, and I'll play the golf. And remember that your greatest contribution is always ahead of you. And as you realize that, you can do amazing things, and you put yourself in a position where you can contribute. So I want to make a offer for anyone that's listening today. We will provide our one-page life plan, which helps you identify your way of being as opposed to your way of doing, the different relationships you have, also sets you up for your theme for the year. And where do I want to go with my life? And then that then breaks up into your 90-day sprint, 5 wins for the week. What am I doing this week? And what am I doing this day? And then the other thing that we have is an asset ability report. It's an asset ability assessment that you and I collaborate on, where it looks at how is my business as an asset? What do the numbers look like? Also, do I have the right teams? Do I have the right systems? And where's my mindset in all this piece? So I want to wrap up with a couple of rapid fire questions. Michael, what do you like to drink?
I'm a tequila guy, John. I love
Tequila.
tequila.
Okay. Meat or on the rocks?
On the rocks.
On the rocks. Okay.
Always. Yeah.
Good. And which one of your favorite foods?
Ooh, I'm also right now I'm in an avocado kick. I love avocados for some reason. I don't know why, but I just have been like eating them every day.
Okay. I really like a good red wine. And my favorite food, is crazy it is, I like green smoothies. I'm a smoothie maker, and it makes me happy. And what's one good book that you'd recommend to people listening?
I mean, I just finished it's taken me 2 years to finish the Apple book. Hearing what Steve Jobs, what his life was like, man, I was like blown away by all the ups and downs of his life, career, both personally, professionally. Amazing, worth worth a read.
One of my favorite books is a book I wrote. It's called Wait, which is What Am I Thinking? Why Am I Talking? And it's an illustrated book because entrepreneurs have no time. And so it's simple, but not simplistic. And so the reason why that's so important is it helps you realize, oh, it's my thinking that's creating my experience. It's not my external world. And so, and that's the next piece. Okay. And if you could put up a billboard in Times Square for 1 week, what would it say?
Oh man, I would just say impact. Make an impact. Yeah, make an impact.
Cool. I might say either connection or ask the question, what matters most?
Okay,
Yep.
like it.
Okay. So, Michael, how can people get in touch with you if they want to get in touch?
They could always find me online or LinkedIn or whatever social media you use, but you can always email me at mlamm, MLAMM at corpadvisorysolutions.com.
Wow. So you have an extra M in your name for Lamb. So I'm John, Jon, because we couldn't afford the H. We weren't like you guys. We didn't grow up in that part of the neighborhood. All we had is Jon. So you can reach me, John, at myturningpoint.com. And you can go to turningpoint.com to get a sense of what we do. We work with leaders and their families and their teams doing personal growth and business transformation. We have a team of psychologists and coaches, consultants, and we take people on the journey from where you are to where you want to go. And that's what we call a turning point, to actualize your greatest potential. So the offer that's available today is attached to this recording will be the asset ability report that helps you do an assessment to figure out where you are and where you want to go. And that looks both at numbers and teams and systems and personal growth, as well as the one-page life plan. Okay, Michael, it was awesome connecting with you. Final words?
Just take the time to think and get off the proverbial rat race and just take some time to really think about what you want to do in life. It's important.
There's no joy like getting out of doubt. And I would suggest finding someone who's a safe VIP, a verbal introspection partner, someone who isn't going to tell you what to do, but can draw it out of you.
Yeah.
Okay, Michael, to be continued. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening. Our mission at Turning Point is to help leaders actualize their potential. And we know there are a lot of things in the way of that. The best way to make significant progress is by making a plan. And the first step to making a plan is understanding where we are, what our potential is, what's holding us back, and how we can play to our strengths and compensate for our weaknesses. We've created an awesome assessment that helps you identify all of these things and sets you on the path to living with joy, making more money, and increasing your productivity. We love this assessment and know you will too. Take it at myturningpoint.com/quiz. That's myturningpoint.com/quiz. Thanks for tuning in and see you next time.